Kang Tae-jun signed the divorce papers on a Tuesday morning in October, and he felt nothing. 6 places to sign. He signed all 6. Replied to a work message with one thumb, while his other hand held the pen. Was in his car before the ink dried, on a call, before he reached the lobby. He told himself it was for the best. He told himself this for 6 weeks. And then his sister called, and sat across from him in a dark car in Gangnam, and said 6 words he was not ready for. She is pregnant? With your child. Welcome back to our channel. We appreciate your support, and we can't wait to share this beautiful story with you. Let's dive in. On a quiet Tuesday morning in October, the attorney slid the documents across the mahogany desk with the practiced sympathy of a man who had done this many times before. 3 places to sign. Initial here, ought here, and here. Full signature at the bottom. The dissolution of a 2-year marriage reduced to 6 instances of his name in black ink. She is not contesting anything, the attorney said. No claim to assets, no request for alimony. She is only taking what she brought into the marriage. Tae-jun stared at the papers. She is taking nothing. Correct, which makes this very simple. Once you sign, I will file with the court. The divorce will be final within 72 hours. Simple. The end of a marriage. Simple. He picked up the pen. His phone buzzed. He glanced at it. A text from his operations chief. Busan situation escalating. Need you on site by 3 p.m. He replied with one thumb, while signing with his other hand. Muscle memory. The thing he had been doing for 2 years, dividing his attention, and splitting himself between the immediate crisis and the thing in front of him that needed his presence, always choosing the crisis. He signed all 6 places. He pushed the papers back across the desk. File it, he said. The attorney nodded. I'm sorry it came to this, Mr. Kang. Tae-jun stood. So am I. But he was not. Not really. Not in the way that would have made him stop, made him call her, made him drive to wherever she was living now and ask if there was any possibility of undoing this. He was sorry in the abstract way you are sorry when something ends badly. He was not sorry enough to fight it. He told himself it was for the best. She deserved someone who could be present. Someone whose phone did not ring at 2 in the morning with problems that required immediate handling. And someone who did not have to calculate the security implications of being seen at certain restaurants. Someone simpler. Someone better. He told himself this in the elevator down to the lobby. He told himself this in the car to Gimpo Airport. He told himself this on the flight to Busan, where a territorial dispute with a competing network required his immediate attention because 3 of his mid-level operators had been threatened, and threats needed responses, calculated and proportional, and delivered through the appropriate channels. He told himself this for 6 weeks. 6 weeks of 18-hour days. 6 weeks of sleeping in his office more often than the serviced residence in Gangnam he had moved into after she left. 6 weeks of Incheon permits, and Busan contracts, and a new development in Seongdong that required restructuring 3 different funding arrangements and negotiating with a municipal oversight body that had its own agenda. 6 weeks of not thinking about the Yongsan apartment they had shared, which he had not entered since the day she moved out. 6 weeks of not thinking about the way she looked at him the last morning they had breakfast together, when he took a call in the middle of her sentence and she stopped talking and never started again. 6 weeks of telling himself he was fine. He was not fine. But Kang Tae-jun had built an empire, both the legitimate construction company that bore his name and the shadow network that made the construction company possible, by being very good at not acknowledging things he did not want to face. And so he worked. He solved problems. He moved through his days with the mechanical efficiency of a man who had learned that motion could be mistaken for purpose if you moved fast enough. On the 43rd day after signing the papers, his phone rang at 8 in the evening. He was in his office, alone. The building around him mostly empty. Security on the ground floor, cleaning crew on 15, him on 19. He had been staring at a site report for the past 30 minutes without processing a single word. The screen lit up. Soo-yeon, his sister, who had called him 6 times in the past 6 weeks and left voicemails that progressed from sympathetic to annoyed to furious. He had not answered any of them. He had not been ready to hear what she would say. Kang Tae-jun considered not answering now. Then he answered, because Soo-yeon was the type of person who would simply show up at his office if he avoided her, and that would be worse. Soo-yeon, we need to talk. Now. Not on the phone. I am outside your building. Come down, or I am coming up. And if I come up, I am going to say things very loudly in front of your security team. He closed the site report. He took the elevator down. She was parked in a loading zone with her hazards on, windows up. He got in the passenger seat. She did not start the car. She turned to look at him with an expression that was equal parts fury and something that looked like grief. You look terrible, she said. Good evening to you, too. Do not do that thing where you deflect with politeness. Or you look terrible because you feel terrible, because you made the worst mistake of your life. And you have been sitting in that office pretending you did not. She took a breath. I saw Thondi today. Every muscle in his body went rigid. Where? Sinshan, the pharmacy near the university. She paused, watching him. She was picking up a prescription. Something cold moved through his chest. Is she sick? She is pregnant. The world stopped, not metaphorically, not in the poetic way that people describe moments of shock. The sounds of Gangnam traffic outside the car disappeared. His sister's voice disappeared. His own heartbeat disappeared. For approximately 4 seconds, Kang Tae-jun, as a man who had negotiated with organized crime networks and municipal politicians and construction unions and every other complicated entity in Seoul, could not process language. Then it all came back in a rush. What did you say? She is pregnant. 14 weeks, maybe 15. I know what I am looking at. I was with our cousin through 2 pregnancies. I know the posture. I know how a certain kind of sweater falls. I know what prenatal vitamins look like when a pharmacist hands them across a counter. Soo-yeon's voice was very steady, very controlled. The tone she used when she was absolutely furious and absolutely certain she was right. Your ex-wife is pregnant with your child, and you signed divorce papers 6 weeks ago and she did not tell you. She did not. He could not finish the sentence. Why, his brain was moving too fast and too slow at the same time, trying to calculate dates, trying to remember the last time they had been together, trying to understand how this was possible and why she had not said anything and what this meant. And, breathe, Soo-yeon said. You are about to hyperventilate in my car, and I'm not dealing with that. He breathed, forced air into lungs that did not want to work correctly. Did you talk to her? His voice came out wrong, tight, strained. Yes, I walked over. She saw me. Her face did something very complicated, and then she confirmed it. She is 14 or 15 weeks pregnant. She was going to call you next week. She had a plan. She was preparing. Soo-yeon leaned closer. Tae-jun, listen to me very carefully. That woman was not hiding this from you out of malice. And she was preparing because that is what she does. She plans. She thinks through every angle. She gets ready before she acts. But I walked into that pharmacy, and now you know, 5 days before she was planning to tell you. Where is she living? The words came out too fast. What is her address? I need to... No. Soo-yeon grabbed his arm, hard. No. You do not go there tonight. You do not go there tomorrow. You do not show up at her door and demand anything. Do you understand me? You lost the right to make demands when you spent 2 years choosing your phone over her voice. The words hit like a physical blow. That woman is carrying your child, Soo-yeon continued, voice rising. And you did not know because you signed divorce papers without fighting, without asking if there was any chance to fix it, without doing anything except tell yourself it was for the best. You want to know what is best. What is best is you sit with this information and you think very carefully about what kind of man you are going to be. Not what kind of father. That is a separate question. What kind of man? Because she does not owe you anything. Not her time. Not her attention. Not a second chance. She built a life without you in 6 weeks. She's stronger than you ever gave her credit for. And if you walk into her space with the same energy you bring to your board meetings, she will shut the doors in your face, and you will deserve it. He sat in the passenger seat of his sister's car, in a loading zone in Gangnam, and felt the ground underneath his entire life shift. A child. His child. Growing inside a woman he had loved and neglected and lost. A woman who had every right to never speak to him again, who was carrying his child and had not told him because she needed time to prepare. And he had not given her that time because his sister had seen her at a pharmacy. And now he knew, and everything was different, and he had no idea what to do. "I need her address," he said quietly. "No. Suyan. I am not giving you her address. You wait. You let her call you next week the way she planned. You respect her timeline instead of imposing your own. That is the first thing you do differently. You respect what she needs instead of taking what you want. I cannot wait a week. Yes, you can. You are going to." Suyan released his arm. "You are going to go back to your apartment. Not your office. Your apartment. And you are going to sleep. And eat something. And think about what you want to say to her when she does call. You are going to think about the fact that this woman sat through however many weeks of pregnancy symptoms alone, that she went to appointments alone, that she has been making every decision about this child alone because you were not there to make them with her. And you are going to sit with how that feels, and you are going to let it hurt, because it should hurt." She was right. She was always right. It was the most infuriating thing about his sister. "Okay," he said. "I will wait." "Good." She started the car. "Now, get out. And Tae-jun?" He paused with his hand on the door. "That woman is the best thing that ever happened to you. I told you that at your wedding. I told you that 6 months into your marriage when I could see you disappearing into your work. I told you a month before she filed, when you called me asking if I thought she was serious, and I told you yes, she is deadly serious, and you need to wake up." Her voice softened. "It was too late then. You lost her. The divorce is final. But there is a child coming, and you have one chance. One chance. To show her that you are capable of being the man she needed you to be. Do not waste it." She drove away. He stood on the Gangnam sidewalk, surrounded by the city he had conquered through force of will and strategic ruthlessness, and realized that none of it, not the construction contracts, not the network, not the buildings with his name on permits across 3 districts, mattered at all compared to the thing he had just learned. He was going to be a father. He had already lost the mother, and he had one chance to prove he was not going to lose everything else that mattered. To understand how completely Kang Tae-jun had destroyed his marriage, you had to understand who he was. Not the public version, the real one. On paper, he was the chairman of Kang Development Group, 38 years old, 3 legitimate construction companies with over 400 employees, major projects in Seongdong, Mapo, Gangnam, with expansion into Busan and Incheon. The kind of developer who appeared in business publications next to words like visionary and industry leader. That was the version that appeared on business cards. The version that did not appear anywhere in writing was more complicated. Kang Tae-jun was the head of a network that controlled construction, development, and territorial rights across 3 districts of Seoul. When a competing developer tried to move into Seongdong without permission, they discovered their financing had fallen through for mysterious reasons. When a municipal politician needed to be convinced to vote a certain way on zoning laws, they received a phone call, always polite, always reasonable, and the vote went the right direction. When someone made the mistake of threatening his people or his territory, they found their circumstances changing rapidly in ways that could never be traced back to him directly. He was not Yakuza. Korea did not work that way. He was something more subtle, more embedded in the legitimate structures of construction and development and city planning. He operated in the gray spaces between legal and illegal, between business and coercion, between the buildings that bore his company name and the rooms where the real decisions got made. He had built this carefully over 15 years. Starting as an enforcer for a mid-level operator in Gangnam, working his way up through competence and ruthlessness and the particular intelligence that sees 3 moves ahead of everyone else. By the time he was 30, he was running his own territory. By 35, he had consolidated 3 smaller networks into one, negotiated peace with the Incheon groups, and established himself as someone you did not cross unless you were prepared for consequences. He was very good at this. He was very good at seeing problems before they became crises, at reading people, at knowing which pressure points to press and when. He was very good at being 3 steps ahead, at controlling every variable, now at making sure nothing surprised him. And then he met Thandi and Kosi, and every single one of those skills became useless. She had arrived in Seoul 2 years and 4 months ago with a journalism fellowship and a camera and questions he was not prepared for. She was researching urban redevelopment, specifically what happened to families when their neighborhoods were demolished to make way for new construction. His name kept appearing in her research. Kang Development Group. Over and over. She had requested an interview through official channels. He should have sent her to his communications team. That was protocol. That was how he handled journalists, carefully, at a distance, with approved talking points, and nothing that could be used against him. Instead, he took the meeting himself. She walked into his 19th floor conference room with a notebook and a recorder and 3 weeks of field research, and she sat across from him at the long glass table and asked, "Mr. Kang, your company holds redevelopment contracts across 3 districts in Seoul. In Seongdong alone, your projects have displaced an estimated 800 families over the past 4 years. Can you tell me what happens to those families after your buildings go up?" No preamble. No small talk. Just the question, direct and precise, asked by a woman who had clearly done her homework and was not going to be managed with corporate language. He should have given her the standard answer. Instead, he reached under the table and placed a folder in front of her. "These are the resettlement plans my company funded for 6 of those projects. I brought them because I assumed you would ask, and I would rather you read the actual documents than rely on second-hand information." She looked at the folder, then at him. "May I?" "That is why it is on the table." She opened it. She read while he waited, and he did not check his phone, did not look at the clock, did not do anything except watch her face as she processed information with the speed of someone who knew exactly what they were reading. After 4 minutes, she looked up. "This covers 6 projects. You have completed 14 in Seongdong." He leaned back slightly. "The other 8 were completed before I restructured the resettlement process." Meaning what happened to those families? Something moved behind his eyes. Not guilt exactly, something more complicated. Some relocated through city programs. Some found housing independently. Some, he paused, I do not have complete data on, which is why the process changed, she wrote in her notebook. That is an honest answer. It is the only kind worth giving when someone is recording. She looked at him over her notebook. He looked back. And something happened in that conference room that neither of them had planned for. The second interview was a week later. Sharper questions, better research. She had spent the weekend on the ground in Seongdong and come back with follow-ups he actually had to think about before answering. The third meeting was a site visit. She filmed. He explained. They argued about what development actually meant. She said it was displacement with better marketing, and he said that was reductive, and neither of them wanted to stop arguing long enough to notice they had been standing in the same spot for 40 minutes. The fourth meeting was not an interview. She texted him a question about a permit discrepancy. He said it was too complicated to explain in writing. She suggested they meet. He suggested a ramyeon shop in Mapo because the food was good and because it was not a conference room, and because he had been looking for a reason to see her somewhere that was not professional. They argued about development frameworks for 40 minutes. Both bowls of ramyun went cold. He ordered fresh ones without asking. She laughed. A real laugh, unguarded and sudden. And the sound of it landed in the room like something neither of them had planned for. He watched her laugh with an expression he was not fast enough to hide. They dated for 4 months. She went in with her eyes open. That was important. She learned about the other side of his business gradually. The men who waited outside restaurants, the phone calls he stepped away for, the particular quality of silence that entered certain rooms when he walked into them. She asked him directly one night on the Hangang path. "I need you to be honest with me about what your company actually is," he told her. "Not everything, but enough. The construction business was legitimate. The network that made the construction business possible was not." "Are people getting hurt?" she asked. "Not by me. Not anymore." "That is not the same as no." "I know it is not." She watched him for 3 more months, and what she saw was a man who operated in a world she did not approve of, who had done things she would not defend, but who was also genuinely building something real. She could not put him in a simple box. She was honest enough to admit that refusing to simplify him was not naivety. It was accuracy. They married 5 months after the ramyun shop. The first year was good. Actually, good. 2 imperfect people who knew the imperfections and chose each other anyway. And then, slowly, the way a crack spreads across a wall over months until the whole thing is compromised, things changed. His operation expanded. New projects in 3 additional districts. Pressure from competing networks in Incheon and Busan. A territorial dispute that required his constant attention. Meetings past midnight, on phone calls that brought him back into rooms with different eyes than he left with. He became the version of himself that had existed before her, present in the apartment, and somewhere else entirely, his body in the room, and his mind already solving the next problem. And Thandi, who had chosen him with her eyes open, who had accepted the complications because the man was worth it, slowly disappeared into those complications until she was just another detail in a life he was managing from a distance. He missed her documentary screening. The Dongdaemun project. 4 months of work. She had reminded him 3 times. He called 2 hours before. A meeting had run over. He was genuinely sorry. He could hear it in his own voice. She said it was fine. He believed her. He missed the next screening, too. He missed their 2nd anniversary, and forgot it completely, until he came home at 1 in the morning and found her still awake, sitting in the living room in the dress he had bought her, and the look on her face was not anger. It was something worse. Resignation. She tried to tell him. Twice. Sat him down and said, "I feel like a detail in your life. Something you take comfort in knowing is there, but do not actually look at anymore." He listened. He said he understood. Nothing changed. She filed the papers while he was in Busan. She moved out to Mapo before he came home. She placed the divorce documents on the kitchen counter, between the coffee maker and the fruit bowl, 2 ordinary objects on either side of an extraordinary decision, and she left. He came home to an empty apartment and papers that needed his signature, and a note that said, "I love you." And that was never the question. But love is not enough when you are not present. I need to build a life where I am seen. I cannot do that here. I am sorry. He read the note once. He put it in his desk drawer. He did not read it again. He signed the papers 6 weeks later without reading them. He told himself it was for the best, and then his sister told him Thandi was pregnant, and he understood that for the best was a lie he had been telling himself, because facing the truth was too painful. The truth was simpler and more devastating. He had been given something precious, and he had not valued it until it was gone. He lasted 4 days. 4 days of Suyan's instruction to wait. 4 days of sitting in his apartment, not his office. She had been very specific, trying to think about what he would say when Thandi called. When he made it 96 hours. On the 5th day, he called in every favor he had. By noon, he had her address. 4th floor, right side. A building in Mapo, near Sinchon Station. He knew Soo-yeon would kill him. He knew Thandi had asked for another week. He knew showing up early was exactly the kind of thing he always did. Imposing his timeline, making decisions without consulting anyone, taking control of situations, because sitting still, with uncertainty, was not something Kang Tae-jun knew how to do. He knew all of this. He went anyway. He told himself he would apologize. He told himself he would explain that he could not wait. He told himself a dozen things that were true and irrelevant, because the real truth was simpler. He was a man who had spent his entire life controlling outcomes, and he did not know how to sit in his apartment for another 3 days, knowing that his child was growing inside a woman who had every right to never speak to him again. He was about to learn what happened when you tried to control something you had already lost. At 5 in the morning, he got in his car. At 5:47, he was parked on a side street in Mapo, looking up at a building that held the entire rest of his life inside it. He sat in the car for 17 minutes. Not because he was afraid, though he was. Because he understood, in the dim way of a man who was finally starting to see his own patterns, that the woman on the 4th floor had made a plan, and he was about to disrupt it by arriving 5 days early. And if he was going to do this, if he was going to disrespect her boundary before they even had their first conversation, he owed her the most careful version of himself he could manage. So he sat until he was sure he had it. Then he got out of the car and walked upstairs and knocked on a door he had no right to knock on, about to face a woman he had no right to face, carrying nothing but the desperate hope that she would let him in long enough to start understanding what he had destroyed. The door opened. Thandi and Kosi stood in her doorway at 6:47 in the morning, 15 weeks pregnant with his child, looking at him with an expression that gave him absolutely nothing. "Soo-yeon told you," she said. Not a question, a statement of fact. Her voice was level, calm, and the voice of someone who had been expecting this and had already decided how it was going to go. "Yes," he said. "I asked for 2 more weeks. I know. I could not wait. I'm sorry." She looked at him for a long moment, taking in the fact that he was here, that he had ignored her timeline, that his first action after finding out she was pregnant was to prove that nothing had changed. He was still the man who made decisions without consulting her, who prioritized his needs over her boundaries, who could not sit still and wait when waiting was what she had asked for. She stepped back from the door, not an invitation, just a widening of space. "Come in," she said. "We are going to have a conversation about boundaries. Right now." He walked into the apartment, and his education began. Thandi heard the knock at 6:47 in the morning. She was standing in her kitchen with a mug of ginger tea held in both hands, watching the steam curl toward the ceiling. The apartment was quiet in the way Mapo mornings were quiet, before the neighborhood woke up. A particular soft stillness that she had come to love, the kind that made room for your own thoughts. Mrs. Bong on the 4th floor was dragging her recycling bins to the hallway, the way she did every Thursday, slow and deliberate, a ritual that marked time. The knock came again. 3 measured strikes, not aggressive, but not tentative either. The knock of someone who had driven across the city and made a decision. She knew. Of course she knew. Soo-yeon had run into her 5 days ago. Soo-yeon had promised not to say anything. But Soo-yeon was also Tae-jun's sister, and some loyalties run deeper than promises made in pharmacy aisles. She put the mug down. She walked to the door. She did not hurry. She opened it. Kang Tae-jun was standing in her hallway, looking like he had not slept in 2 days, which was accurate. He was wearing a gray pullover and dark trousers, no suit jacket, no tie. His hair was pushed back in a way that meant he had run his hand through it about 40 times on the drive over. He did not look like the man who ran 3 construction companies and an underground network and half the development contracts in Seoul. He looked like a man who had received information he was not prepared for and had spent 5 days trying to figure out what to do with it before giving up and driving to Mapo at 6 in the morning. They looked at each other. Suyan told you, Thandi said, not a question. Yes. I asked for 2 more weeks. I know, I could not wait. She looked at him for a long moment. Then she stepped back from the door. Not an invitation, just a widening of space. He walked in. The apartment was small. 2 rooms and a kitchen and a window that looked out over a side street where a man sold roasted chestnuts from a cart every evening. The space was clean and organized in a way that made immediate sense if you understood her. Books stacked by the wall, arranged by subject. Camera equipment on a dedicated shelf with everything in its specific place. A desk near the window with an external monitor. Hard drives lined up along the back. A notebook open to a page covered in handwriting so small and dense it looked like a foreign language. A framed photo on the shelf. 2 women laughing at a wedding. One of them Thandi, one of them her friend Zora. No photos of him. He noticed. The coffee maker was on the left side of the counter. He noticed this, too. It had been on the right side in Yongsan, positioned there the first morning they moved in, because she said the light from the window was better on that side. She had moved it. Everything in this space was a choice she had made, without consulting him, and the message was clear. This is mine. I built this. You are a visitor here. She did not offer him a seat, because there was only 1 chair, and she was standing. She did not offer him tea. She stood in her kitchen in her own apartment, and looked at him with an expression that gave him nothing. You drove across Seoul at 6 in the morning, she said. Yes. You could not give me 2 weeks. No. Why not? He looked at her, really looked at her, and saw what he should have seen months ago, what he should have been seeing all along. Not the idea of her, not the wife-shaped space in his life that he had stopped paying attention to, but her, Thandi and Kosi, standing in her small kitchen in Mapo with her arms crossed, 15 weeks pregnant with his child, looking at him with the particular exhaustion of a woman who has had to make every decision alone because the person who was supposed to be beside her was somewhere else. Because I found out 5 days ago that you are carrying my child, and I have been sitting with that information in an empty apartment trying to respect your timeline, and I failed. I made it 4 days. I'm sorry for that. I am sorry for coming early. I'm sorry for not giving you the 2 weeks you needed. But I am here, and I need you to tell me where we are. She looked at him steadily. We are divorced. I know. The papers are final, signed by both of us. That part of our lives is over. I know. Then what are you doing in my apartment, Taejun? The question landed exactly where it was aimed. He had no good answer. He had a dozen answers. Because you are carrying my child. Because I need to know what happens next. Because I cannot sit in that serviced residence for another night without knowing how this is going to work. But none of them were good enough, and all of them were about him. I do not know, he said finally. I drove here without a plan. I just needed to see you. You needed to see me. She repeated it without inflection. You needed to see me. So you got in your car and came to my apartment before 7 in the morning. Did you think about what I might need? Did you think about whether I wanted to have this conversation today? Or whether I had structured my plan around having 2 more weeks to prepare? No. No. She nodded slowly. That is honest, at least. She walked past him to the kitchen. She picked up her mug of ginger tea. She took a sip. He stood in her living room, too large for the space, and understood that he was being made to wait, that this was deliberate, that she was showing him, in real time, what it felt like to be in a room with someone who was physically present, but mentally somewhere else. She finished her tea. She rinsed the mug. She dried it. She put it away. Every movement precise and unhurried. He waited. Finally, she turned to face him. Do you remember the night of the Dongdaemun screening? She asked. The question landed like a slap. He went very still. Thandi, do you remember it, Taejun? Yes or no? Yes. Tell me what you remember. He closed his eyes. You had a documentary screening. I was supposed to be there. I had a meeting in Gangnam that ran late. I called you 2 hours before. You said it was fine. I missed it. That is what happened. Now tell me what you remember about how I sounded on the phone when you called." He opened his eyes. He could not answer. He had not been paying attention to how she sounded. He had been managing a crisis, calculating the fastest way to end the call and get back to the problem in front of him. Her voice had been something happening in the background. "You do not remember," she said. "Of course you do not. I will tell you." I sounded calm. I said it was fine. I said there would be other screenings. I said everything a supportive wife says when her husband calls with an apology 2 hours before, something that mattered to her. She paused. "I was sitting in the theater when I took that call. The screening started in 90 minutes. I had 12 people coming who had flown in from other cities to see the work. I had the community organizers from Dongdaemun who had trusted me to tell their story. I had Zora, who had cleared her schedule to be there. And I had you on the phone, telling me you were not coming. And I said it was fine, because that is what I always said. Because I learned somewhere in the first year of our marriage that saying how I actually felt was pointless when you were already solving the next problem." He could not speak. You missed the next screening, too," she continued. "Do you remember that one?" "Yes." "Do you remember why?" "Busan. There was a contract issue. I had to be there in person." "There was always a contract issue. There was always something in Busan or Incheon or Gangnam or one of the 12 other places that needed you more than I did." Her voice was not loud. It did not need to be. "Do you know how many times I told you about my work in the last 6 months of our marriage?" He shook his head. 3 times. I tried 3 times. Once in the kitchen when I was describing a breakthrough in an edit sequence. Your phone buzzed. You glanced at it. Just a glance, 2 seconds. You looked back and asked a question, but I could feel that you were not with me anymore. Once at dinner, when I was explaining a problem with the Jongno project, Fon, you were on your phone the entire time. I am not sure you heard a single word. Once in the car, driving back from your mother's house. I was telling you about a new film idea. You took a call. You finished the call. You did not ask me to repeat what I had been saying. You did not even remember that I had been speaking. Each sentence was a stone placed carefully on a pile. He stood under the weight of them. "I stopped telling you about my work after that," she said. "Not because you told me to stop, because I could feel my words hitting a surface that was no longer absorbing them. Do you know what that feels like, Taijun? To be sitting across from someone you love, someone you chose, and to feel yourself disappearing while they look right at you? Thandi, I am not finished." Her voice was still calm, still precise. "Do you remember our anniversary? The second one." He did remember that one. He had blocked out the others, but that one had been bad enough that even his capacity for selective memory could not erase it. "I made reservations," she said. "That place in Itaewon you liked. I asked you 3 times to confirm you would be there. You said yes every time. I wore the dress you bought me for my birthday. I got to the restaurant at 7. You did not show up. You did not call. At 8:30 you sent a text. 2 words. Emergency, sorry. I ate dinner alone at a table set for 2, while the servers gave me sympathetic looks, and I smiled and pretended it was fine. He felt something crack open in his chest. You came home at 1 in the morning, she continued. I was still awake. I was sitting in the living room in that dress waiting for you. When you walked in, you looked exhausted. You said you were sorry and the Incheon situation had exploded and you had to handle it. You asked if I was okay. I said yes. You believed me. You went to bed. I sat in the living room until 3 in the morning still wearing that dress, and that was the night I started thinking about divorce. The room was completely silent, except for the sound of Mrs. Bong's television coming through the wall, something bright and cheerful that made the silence in Thandi's apartment even heavier. I tried to tell you, Thandi said quietly. I sat you down twice. I said I felt like a detail in your life. Something you took comfort in knowing was there, but did not actually look at anymore. You listened. You said you understood. You said it would change. Nothing changed. So I filed the papers. I moved out while you were in Busan because I knew if I was there when you came home, you would ask me to stay, and I would be tempted, and I had already learned that temporary fixes do not work with you. You need the wall to fall down completely before you notice it was holding something up. She walked past him to the desk. She sat down in the only chair. She looked at him standing in her living room, with nowhere to go and nothing to lean on. So now you know I am pregnant, she said. And you drove here at 6 in the morning because you could not wait 2 weeks. You could not give me the space I asked for, the same way you could not give me your attention when we were married. You are already proving to me that nothing has changed. So I will ask you again. What are you doing in my apartment? He looked at her, and he saw himself reflected in her eyes. Not the version he carried in his head, not the man who ran half of Seoul's development operations and commanded rooms with his presence, but the truth. A man who had been given something precious and had not valued it until it was gone. A man who was standing in a small Mapo apartment being shown, in excruciating detail, exactly what he had thrown away. I'm here, he said slowly, because I got it wrong. I got it wrong for 18 months, and I did not see it until you were gone. I am here because I found out 5 days ago that you are carrying my child, and the only thing I have been able to think about is that I'm going to be a father, and I have no idea how to do that, because being present is not something I have ever learned how to do, and you needed me to learn it, and I failed. He stopped. His voice was not quite steady. I am here because I do not know what else to do. I drove across the city because sitting in that apartment with this information was impossible, and I know that makes me selfish. And I know I should have waited. And I know showing up here before you called me is exactly the kind of thing I always did. Making decisions without consulting you, imposing my timeline on your life. I know all of that, and I am sorry. She looked at him for a long moment. Sit on the floor, she said. What? You are standing in my living room taking up space. I did not invite you to stand there. I did not invite you here at all. But you are here, and I am not giving you my chair. So sit on the floor. He looked at the floor. Then he looked at her. She was not bluffing. She was not being cruel. She was drawing a line, and the line was, you do not get to be comfortable here. You do not get to take up space like you own it. You are a guest who arrived uninvited, and you will sit where I tell you to sit. He sat down on the floor, back against the wall, legs stretched out. Thondi watched him do it. Something flickered across her face. Not satisfaction exactly, but acknowledgement. He had done what she asked. It was a small thing. It mattered. The divorce does not change, she said. It is final. I am not revisiting that conversation today or any day soon. Are we clear? Yes. I live here now. This apartment is mine. This neighborhood is mine. I have built a life here that I am keeping. This child is going to be part of that life. You can be part of this child's life. That is a conversation we will have, carefully, over time, and on terms we both agree to. She paused. But you and I, as a question, that is not on the table. I understand. Good. She turned to her computer and opened a file. I have a call at 9 with an editor in Berlin. You can stay until 8:30. Then you leave. He sat on the floor of her apartment and watched her work. She did not speak to him. She did not look at him. She opened her editing timeline and put on headphones and disappeared into her work with the complete absorption of someone who had learned to be fully present with the things that mattered to her. He watched her for 90 minutes. He watched the way she leaned forward when a cut was working, the slight tilt of her head when she was problem-solving, the small sound of recognition when she found what she was looking for. She was completely herself, I'd completely in the room with her work, and he had spent the better part of 2 years being in rooms with her without actually seeing her. At 8:30, she took off her headphones and looked at the clock. Then she looked at him. "Time," she said. He stood. Every part of his body hurt from sitting on the floor for 90 minutes. He did not mention it. He walked to the door. He stopped with his hand on the handle. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "You can ask. I might not answer." "When are you going to call me? The call you had planned for next week." She considered this. "When I am ready." "When will that be?" "I do not know. That is what ready means. It means I will know when I get there." He nodded slowly. "Okay." "Tae-jun." He turned. "Do not come back here unannounced," she said. "Do not show up at this building. Do not wait outside hoping to run into me. Do not send people to check on me. I will call you when I call you, and if you cannot respect that boundary, then the conversation we have about this child is going to be very different from the one I was planning." "I understand. I hope you do." He opened the door and stepped into the hallway. Mrs. Bong was there, standing with a bag of recycling and the expression of a woman who had been listening through the wall and had formed comprehensive opinions. She looked him up and down, slowly, thoroughly, with the unhurried assessment of a woman who had spent decades diving into cold ocean water and had long since decided that anything happening on dry land could not touch her. "You are the ex-husband," she said in Korean. "Yes, ma'am." "You look terrible." "Yes, ma'am." "Good. Thought you should." She walked to the garbage chute and disposed of her recycling. She came back and stopped in front of him. "That woman is worth 10 of you. Do not come back here unless you have something useful to bring. And I do not mean flowers. Flowers are what useless men bring when they think gestures are the same as change." "Yes, ma'am." She went back into her apartment and closed the door with a definitive click. Tae-jun stood in the hallway for a moment, having been assessed and dismissed by a woman he had never met before, and walked downstairs feeling something he had not felt in a long time. Not humiliated. Seen. Accurately seen by people who owed him nothing and had no reason to soften the view. He sat in his car for 20 minutes, looking up at the building. 4th floor, right side. Her window was dark. She had closed the blinds after he left. Then he drove back to Gangnam with no idea when he would see her again. She did not call for 3 weeks. 3 weeks of checking his phone every hour, 3 weeks of starting to text and deleting the message before it was finished. 3 weeks of sitting in meetings and hearing nothing because his mind was in a Mapo apartment with a woman who was carrying his child and who had every right to take as long as she needed to decide whether he deserved a conversation. Soo-yeon called him on day 8. "Have you heard from her?" "No." "Good. That means you did not scare her off completely. Do not call her. Do not text her. Do not do anything except wait." "I know how to wait." "No, you do not. You are a man who makes things happen by force of will. Waiting is not your skill set, but you are going to learn, because that woman is teaching you, and if you are smart, you will be a good student." She hung up before he could respond. On day 12, he was in his office when his operations chief came in with a report about the Seongdong project. A company called Daesong Holdings had filed an injunction, environmental violations. The whole project was frozen. 412 families were about to lose their transitional housing if the freeze held past 60 days. He read the report 3 times. Then he made a call. Within 6 hours, he had traced Daesong Holdings back to its real ownership, a front company for a competing network in Busan that had been trying to break into Seoul's construction sector for 2 years. This was not about environmental violations. This was about leverage. Someone was using 412 families as a weapon aimed at him. He could handle it. He had handled situations like this a dozen times. He knew exactly which calls to make, which pressure points to press, how to make the problem disappear quietly. He sat with his phone in his hand for 30 minutes. Then he put the phone down and did nothing. If he solved this the way he always solved things, quietly, through the network, with no public record, the families would be protected, but Thandi would never know. And if she found out later, she would know that he had handled it without telling her, the same way he had handled everything in their marriage without consulting her, making decisions about things that affected her life without bringing her into the room. He did nothing. He sat with the problem. He waited. While on day 17, his phone rang at 9 in the morning. Unknown number. He answered on the first ring. "This is Thandi." His chest tightened. "I'm here. I'm calling to tell you that I'm 17 weeks pregnant. The next doctor's appointment is Thursday at 9:30. If you want to be there, you can be there. This is not an invitation to anything else. This is a conversation about the child. Are we clear?" "We are clear. Can I ask you something?" A pause. "What? Have you heard about the Seongdong situation? The injunction?" Another pause. Longer this time. "How do you know I know about that?" "Because Ji-hwan is your contact from the original documentary, and he would have called you the moment it happened. Have you heard?" "Yes, I heard. Why are you asking?" "Because I traced the injunction back to its source. Daesong Holdings is a front for a Busan network that is trying to pressure me out of several contracts. The families are not the target. They are the leverage. I can make this go away. I can make it go away in 72 hours. But I wanted you to know first, because the last time I made decisions without consulting you, I lost you, and I am not making that mistake again." Silence on the other end. He could hear her breathing. "You called to tell me before you handled it," she said slowly. "Yes." "Why?" "Because those families matter to you. Because you have their faces in your footage. Because if I solved this without telling you, I would be proving that nothing has changed." He paused. "I am not asking permission. It is my network, my problem. I will handle it. But I wanted you to know, that is all." More silence. "But then handle it however you need to handle it." "But Tae-jun." "Yes? I am also handling it. My way. I have been working on something for the past 4 days. You do what you do. I will do what I do. The families will be protected from both directions." He closed his eyes. Of course she was handling it. Of course she had her own plan. She always did. "Understood," he said. "Thursday, 9:30. The clinic is in Sinchon. I will text you the address." "I will be there." She hung up. He sat in his office holding his phone and feeling something shift in his chest. She had called, not because he had pressured her, because she was ready. And when she was ready, she had given him a piece of information about the child and a chance to show up in a way that mattered. He handled the Seongdong situation that afternoon. 3 phone calls, to 2 very specific conversations with people who owed him favors. 1 meeting in Gangnam with a municipal oversight official who suddenly discovered that the environmental violations in question had been based on faulty data and needed to be reassessed. The injunction was lifted in 72 hours, quietly, efficiently, with no public record of how it happened. Before he made a single move, he called her first. Not to ask permission, not to prove anything, just to say, "I'm doing this, and I wanted you to know." For the first time in 2 years, he brought her into the room before making the decision. Tell me what you think in the comments. Is this man actually changing? Or is he just getting smarter about hiding who he is? And if you are new here, subscribe. We tell stories like this every week. 3 days after that, Thandi's piece ran on 2 major news services, families on camera, the idle cranes, the half-finished buildings, the notices residents had received, the grandmother from Dongdaemun explaining that this apartment was supposed to be the first place she had ever lived that nobody could take from her, the bicycle repairman shaking his head in his empty workshop. 3 minutes of footage that made the political cost of letting the project die quietly impossible to ignore. Within 48 hours, every politician within 5 districts of Seongdong was calling for the freeze to be lifted. Within 3 weeks, the cranes were moving again. 412 families kept their housing. His operations chief came to his office with the news. The Seongdong injunction has collapsed, sir. Full media coverage made it politically impossible to maintain. Someone filmed the families and the site and took the footage to 2-wire services. Tae-jun looked up slowly. Who filmed it? A pause. Your ex-wife, sir. He sat alone in his office for a long time after that. Then he called Soo-yeon. Did you see the Seongdong piece? I saw it. She did not do it for you. I want to make that very clear. She did it because 412 families needed someone to pick up a camera, and she is the person who picks up cameras when cameras need picking up. That is who she is. That is who she was when you married her. That is who she was the entire time you were not paying attention. I know. Do you? Because that woman just saved your project without asking you for permission, or credit, or anything at all. She just did it because it needed doing. She protected those families from 2 different directions, your way and her way, because she understands that some problems need solving from multiple angles, and she does not need you to tell her how. Soo-yeon paused. Are you going to thank her? At the appointment. Thursday. Good. And Tae-jun. Yes? Do not bring flowers. Flowers are what useless men bring when they think gestures are the same as change. She hung up. He showed up Thursday at 9:25. 5 minutes early, the way Soo-yeon had told him not to be 12 minutes early, because that was excessive. Thandi was already in the waiting room. She was wearing a loose sweater and dark trousers, her hair pulled back, reading something on her phone. She looked up when he walked in. You're early, she said. 5 minutes. You said 12 was unnecessary. I did say that. She stood. The appointment is in 5 minutes. We go in together. You can ask questions if you have them. You do not speak over me or for me. Clear? Clear. They went in together. The doctor was a woman in her 50s, who had the calm efficiency of someone who had done this 10,000 times, and could read a room in 3 seconds. She looked at Thandi, then at Tae-jun, then back at Thandi. This is the father? She asked in Korean. Yes, Thandi said. Good. Sit where I can see both of you. The appointment lasted 30 minutes. The doctor showed them the ultrasound, explained what they were looking at, pointed out the measurements that mattered. I answered Tae-jun's questions with the patience of someone who understood that this was new territory for him, and that precise questions meant he was paying attention. When it was over, they walked out together. The hallway was bright and clinical, and full of other couples who looked like they had not been divorced for 6 weeks. Thank you, he said, for letting me be there. You are the father. You should be there. She paused. The Seongdong piece. It worked. I saw. It was good work. So was yours. Ji-hwan told me the injunction was lifted 3 days before the media coverage. That was not a coincidence. No. You handled it your way. I handled it mine. Both ways mattered. They did. She looked at him for a moment. You called me before you did it. You told me what you were doing. So that is different. I told you I would not make decisions about things that affect you without bringing you into the room. I meant it. Something in her expression shifted. Not warmth. Not yet. But acknowledgement. He had done what he said he would do. It was a small thing. It mattered. Next appointment is in 4 weeks, she said. I will text you the date. I will be there. She walked away. He watched her go. When she was out of sight, he leaned against the wall and closed his eyes and felt, for the first time in 6 weeks, like he had not made things worse. The appointments became a rhythm. Every 4 weeks. 9:30. The clinic in Sinchon. She would arrive first. He would arrive 5 minutes early. They would sit in the waiting room without speaking, go in together, listen to the doctor, ask their questions. Afterward, she would leave. He would watch her go. He did not ask for more. He did not push for coffee after, or a walk, or any of the things he wanted. He showed up when she told him to show up, and he left when she walked away, and he learned to live in the small space she had given him. But he started doing other things. Small things. Things he did not tell her about. On week 18, he called the community center in Xiongdong and asked what still needed fixing. They gave him a list. He had 6 items addressed within the week. On week 19, he started reading. Not business reports, parenting books. 3 of them, cover to cover, with the same systematic attention he brought to contract negotiations. He took notes, he highlighted sections, he cross-referenced recommendations across different authors. And Suyan called him on a Saturday and found him on his couch with a book about developmental milestones and a notepad covered in his precise handwriting. "Are you studying infant sleep patterns?" she asked. "Yes." "Like it is a contract negotiation?" "It is more important than a contract negotiation." She was quiet for a moment. Then, "Good answer." On week 20, he started learning how to cook. Not elaborate meals, the basics. Miyokguk, because the book said it was good for postpartum recovery, and he wanted to know how to make it correctly. He called his mother. She was so surprised that she did not speak for 10 seconds. Then she invited him over and taught him, with the particular attention of a woman who understood that her son was trying to build something he did not know how to build, and that teaching him how to make soup was the most useful thing she could do. He burned the first batch. The second batch was edible. The third batch was good. His mother tasted it and nodded once, which was her version of high praise. "You are doing this for her," his mother said. It was not a question. "Yes." "Good. You should have been doing it all along." "I know." She patted his hand. "Better late than never. Keep practicing." On week 22, he went to a furniture store in Itaewon that specialized in infant equipment. He spent 3 hours there. He asked approximately 800 questions. The store employee who helped him started out annoyed and ended up genuinely impressed by the level of detail Taejun wanted on every piece of equipment. "Are you always this thorough?" the employee asked. "Yes." "Your wife is lucky." "She is my ex-wife, and no, she is not. But I am trying to be worth her time." He left with a list of recommendations, product specifications, and safety certifications for every item. He did not buy anything. It was not his apartment. He had no right to make those decisions. But he had the information, and when the time came to have a conversation about what the baby needed, he would be ready. On week 23, Mrs. Bong found him in the hallway outside Thondi's apartment at 8 in the morning on a Friday. He was holding a bag from the Noryangjin fish market. She stopped. She looked at the bag. She looked at him. "You are the ex-husband who looks terrible," she said. "Yes, ma'am." "You have mackerel." "Yes, ma'am. Someone told me you prefer the left stall, not the right." Her eyes narrowed. "Who told you that?" "I asked around. People had opinions." She took the bag and looked inside. She inspected the fish with the critical eye of someone who knew exactly what good mackerel looked like. After a thorough examination, she looked back at him. "This is good fish," she said. "Thank you." "You are trying to bribe me." "No, ma'am. I am trying to show respect to the person who has been looking after Thondi when I was not." She looked at him for a long moment. "You are slightly less useless than before." "Thank you, ma'am. Come back next Friday. Same stall. If the quality drops, I will know, and I will tell her you are not serious." "Yes, ma'am." She went back into her apartment. He stood in the hallway feeling like he had just passed a test he had not known he was taking. The next Friday, he was back. Same stall, same quality. Mrs. Bong opened the door, inspected the fish, and gave him a bag of tangerines. "These are from Jeju," she said. "Good for pregnancy. Give them to her." "I cannot just give them to her. She has not invited me up." "Then leave them outside the door with a note." "What should the note say?" "From Mrs. Bong. Do not put your name on it. She does not need the pressure." He left the tangerines outside Thondi's door, with a note that said exactly what Mrs. Bong told him to say. When he came back the next Friday, the bag was gone. This became the pattern. Every Friday. Mackerel for Mrs. Bong, but tangerines for Thondi, with notes that said they were from Mrs. Bong. He did not ask if she knew. He did not ask for credit. He just kept showing up. On week 25, Su Yan called him at 10 at night. "Have you talked to her? Outside of the appointments?" "No." "Why not?" "Because she told me not to come back unless I had something useful to bring. I am bringing fish to her neighbor and leaving tangerines outside her door. That is what I have." Su Yan was quiet. Then, "You are learning." "I'm trying." "Keep trying." "And Tae-jun?" "Yes?" "She knows the tangerines are from you. Mrs. Bong is not subtle. But Thondi is letting you do it anyway. That means something." She hung up, and he sat in his apartment holding his phone and thought about tangerines and what they meant when you left them outside someone's door every week for a month without asking for anything in return. On week 27, everything changed. He was at his office when the call came, not from Thondi, from the hospital. "Mr. Kang, this is Sinshan Medical Center. Your wife was brought in 30 minutes ago. She is stable, but we need you here." His vision narrowed. "What happened?" "She had some bleeding. She came in as a precaution. The doctor wants to keep her for observation. She listed you as her emergency contact." He was in his car in 45 seconds. He made it to Sinshan in 12 minutes, which should have taken 25, and he did not care about the traffic laws he broke getting there. She was in a room on the 3rd floor. Then we found her in a hospital bed, sitting up, looking annoyed and exhausted and fine. The relief that hit him was so intense, he had to stop in the doorway and breathe. "You are okay," he said. "I'm fine. It was spotting. The doctor said it is normal. They're keeping me for 4 hours as a precaution." "What happened?" "I was carrying equipment up the stairs. Too much equipment. I felt something. I came straight here." He walked into the room. He wanted to yell at her for carrying too much, for not calling someone, for not asking for help. He did not. He pulled the chair next to the bed and sat down. "You listed me as your emergency contact," he said. "You are the father. That is what emergency contacts are for." "Thank you." She looked at him. Really looked at him, the way she used to look at him in the early days, before everything got complicated. "You got here fast." "Yes." "You broke several traffic laws." "Probably." "Tae-jun, I was in Gangnam when they called. You were here, and something was wrong, and I needed to be here too. I'm sorry if showing up was overstepping, but I could not sit in that office." She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "You can stay, if you want." "I want." He stayed. For all 4 hours, he sat in the chair next to the hospital bed while she dozed and woke and dozed again. A nurse came in twice to check vitals. The doctor came in once to confirm everything was fine and explain what to watch for. Tae-jun listened to all of it, with the focused attention of someone memorizing instructions he might need later. When they discharged her at 7 in the evening, he walked her out to the street. "I can take a taxi," she said. "I will drive you." "Tae-jun, please, let me drive you home. You do not have to invite me up. I will drive you to your building and leave. Please." She looked at him for a long moment. Then she nodded. They drove to Mapo in silence. He pulled up outside her building. She opened the door. "Thank you," she said. "Thondi." She stopped. "Can I ask you something?" "What?" "Can I come to the next appointment early? Not 5 minutes, 30 minutes. I want to talk to the doctor about what to watch for, what signs matter, what I should know in case something like this happens again." She looked at him. "You want a separate conversation with the doctor?" "Yes. So I know what to do if you need help and I am not there. So I am not useless if something happens." Something in her face softened. Just slightly. "Okay, you can come early. 30 minutes. Talk to the doctor." "Thank you." She got out of the car. She walked into her building. He sat in the car watching her window on the 4th floor until the light came on, and he knew she was inside and safe. Then he drove back to Gangnam and sat in his apartment thinking about what it meant that she had listed him as her emergency contact. That when something went wrong, his name was the one she had given them. Not Zora. Not Soo-yeon. His. It meant she trusted him to show up, even after everything. Even with the divorce final and the distance between them still enormous. She trusted him to show up when it mattered. He could build on that. Week 29. He showed up 30 minutes early, the way she had said he could. The doctor took him into a consultation room and went through everything. Warning signs, what to watch for, when to call, what symptoms required immediate attention. He took notes. He asked follow-up questions. The doctor watched him fill 2 pages of a notebook with precise handwriting and said, "You are thorough. This is my child. Thorough is the minimum." When Thandi arrived, he was in the waiting room with his notebook closed, and his expression carefully neutral. They went in together. The appointment was routine. Everything was progressing normally. The baby was measuring well. Afterward, in the hallway, Thandi stopped. "Do you have somewhere you need to be?" she asked. "No. My afternoon is clear." She looked at him for a moment, calculating something. Then she said, "There is a sundubu jjigae place in Uljiro, so I go there sometimes. The owner knows me. If you want to get lunch, you can." His heart stopped, restarted. "I would like that," he said carefully. They took the subway to Uljiro. She led him to a small restaurant with steamed-up windows and plastic chairs and the particular atmosphere of a place that had been feeding the same neighborhood for 30 years. The owner saw Thandi walk in, and her face lit up. "You brought someone," the owner said in Korean, looking at Tae-jun with unconcealed curiosity. "This is Tae-jun," Thandi said. "He is the father." The owner's eyes went wide. She looked between them. Then she nodded once and disappeared into the kitchen. 2 bowls of sundubu jjigae appeared within 5 minutes, both steaming, both perfect. They ate. Thandi told him about her new project, a documentary about Haenyeo divers, which had started with Mrs. Bong and the stories the older woman told over soup on Saturday afternoons. He listened. He asked questions, real questions, specific questions about the structure and the timeline, and the subjects she was interviewing. His phone buzzed twice. He did not look at it. She noticed. "Your phone," she said. "I'm here. It can wait." She put down her spoon. She looked at him. "You turned your phone face down," she said. "Yes. You never did that before." "I know. I am doing it now." Something moved across her face, something that looked like the beginning of a thaw. They finished lunch. Outside the restaurant, on the Uljiro sidewalk with the city moving around them, she stopped. "This was good," she said. It was. "I might do it again. If you are interested." "I am interested." She nodded. "Okay. I will text you." She walked toward the subway. He watched her go. When she disappeared down the stairs, he stood on the Uljiro sidewalk and felt something he had not felt in months. Not hope, exactly. Something more solid than hope. Possibility. She texted him 3 days later. Another lunch. Same restaurant. They talked about the Haenyeo project, about the families in Seongdong, about the new editing software she was learning. He listened. He was present, the way he should have been for 2 years, and was finally learning how to be now. The third lunch, the owner brought them extra banchan without being asked, and said to Thandi in Korean, "This one is better than last time." Thandi smiled. "He is learning." Good. Men should learn. The fourth lunch, Thandi told him about the baby's movement, and how it had started as small flutters and was now unmistakable kicks, especially at night. He asked if he could feel it. She hesitated. Then she took his hand and placed it on the side of her stomach. They sat in a Sundubu Jjigae restaurant in Uljiro, with his hand on her stomach, and the lunch crowd moving around them, and the baby kicked against his palm, and he made a sound he could not control. "That is her," Thandi said softly. "That is her," he agreed. She let him keep his hand there for another moment. Then she gently moved it away. On week 33, she invited him to her apartment, not for a visit, for a specific purpose. "The bathroom tiles are slippery near the tub," she said over lunch. "I need a grab bar installed. Mrs. Bong's nephew said he could do it, but I trust you more. Can you install a grab bar?" "Yes. Art, I watched a video." She almost smiled. "Of course you did." He showed up on Tuesday evening with a bag of tools and the grab bar, and the specific expression of a man who had watched the installation video 3 times and was not going to break her tiles. Mrs. Bong was in the hallway when he arrived. She looked at the bag. "Tools," she said. "Yes, ma'am. Grab bar for the bathroom." "You know how to install a grab bar?" "I watched a very thorough video." She nodded slowly. "Good. Useful skills. Better than flowers." "Yes, ma'am." Thandi let him in. He went to the bathroom. She pulled the desk chair to the doorway and sat watching him work. He narrated quietly as he went. "This is the stud. This is why the anchor goes here. This is why the drill speed matters." He broke one grout line, cleaned it up with sealant. And when he was finished, he tested the bar with both hands. "Solid." She stood and tested it herself. "Good." He cleaned up. She made tea. They sat at the kitchen table, and she told him about a new interview she had filmed with a Henyo diver who was 83 years old and still diving every morning. He asked questions. His phone buzzed. He turned it face down without looking. She watched him do it. "You keep doing that," she said. "I am in this room. The phone is not important." Something in her expression shifted. The thing that had started at the restaurant, the slow thaw, moved another degree. "Taejun." "Yes?" "I have been watching you for the past 3 months. The appointments, the lunches, the grab bar, the way you turn your phone over, and the tangerines every Friday that you think I do not know are from you." He went very still. "I know the difference between a man who is performing change and a man who is actually doing it," she said. "I have been filming people for 10 years. I understand what real looks like." She paused. "What you are doing is real. I need you to know that I see it." He could not speak. "I told you the divorce does not change," she continued. "It is still final. I am not going back to Yongsan. I am not going back to what we were. But I have been watching you show up every week in ways that do not make speeches about themselves. And I think we need to have a conversation about what happens next. Not today. I need more time. But soon. Whenever you are ready," he said. "So I will let you know." He left that night feeling like the ground under his feet had shifted in a direction he was afraid to hope for. She called him 2 weeks later. "I finished the documentary, the Henyo project. I want to show it to someone before I send it to the editor. Can you come over Thursday evening?" "Yes. What time?" 8. We are going to the rooftop." He arrived at 7:55. Thandi was waiting in the hallway with her laptop. She led him upstairs to the rooftop. Seoul spread out around them, lights and buildings, and the river in the distance. She sat on the concrete ledge. He took the folding chair someone had left up there. She turned the screen toward him and pressed play. 47 minutes. The Henyo divers, their history, their community. The way the ocean had changed over decades, and the way they had adapted. Mrs. Bong was in it, talking about her years diving in Jeju, the particular cold of winter water, the particular satisfaction of surfacing with a good catch. The 83-year-old diver explaining that she would dive until her body would not let her anymore, and maybe not even then. The last shot was a dusk scene, women walking into the ocean in their wetsuits, silhouettes against the water, continuous with the generations before them and the ones that would come after. The screen went dark. He was quiet for a long time. "That is the best work you have ever made," he said. "You have not seen most of my work." The words landed exactly where they were aimed. He took them. "You are right. I have not. That is on me. But I am asking now, if you will let me, on to see the rest. I want to know what you have been making while I was not paying attention. I want to see all of it." She looked at him. "Why?" "Because you are brilliant, and I missed it. I was in rooms with you, and I was not watching. I want to watch now, if you will let me." She closed the laptop. Seoul hummed below them. Mrs. Bong's television came through an open window somewhere, bright and cheerful. "Taejun, I need to ask you something, and I need an honest answer." "Ask." "If none of this had happened, no pregnancy, no Soo-yeon at the pharmacy, no crisis to solve, would you have come back to me?" He was quiet for a long time. The real kind of quiet. The kind that comes from going somewhere inside yourself. You do not usually go and finding what is there and deciding whether to say it out loud. "I think," he said slowly, "I would have kept telling myself you needed space until enough time passed that coming back felt impossible. And then I would have told myself it was too late. And I would have believed it. Because believing it was easier than admitting I was afraid to come back and find the door locked." She looked at Seoul, at the lights, and the buildings, and the river. "That is the most honest thing you have ever said to me," she said. "I know. It is also the saddest thing you have ever said to me. I know that too." She turned to look at him. "I need you to stay this honest. That is what I need from you. Not grand gestures, not a plan with 12 points. Just this. Honest. Every day. I can do that. Do not tell me. Show me. You have been showing me for 3 months. Keep showing me. I will." Something in the air on the rooftop shifted. Below them, the chestnut vendor was closing his cart. A cat jumped onto the counter, and the vendor shooed it away with the practiced motion of someone who had this argument every night. Thundi laughed. A real laugh, all the way from her chest. Taejun laughed too, surprised by it, the sound coming out without permission. They sat on the rooftop looking at Seoul, 18 inches between them. The gap did not close. But for the first time since the divorce papers, the gap did not feel like distance. It felt like space that was being tended to, like ground that was being prepared. "Taejun." "Yes." "I need to say something." "Say it." "I am not going back to Yongsan. I am not going back to what we were. That version of our marriage did not work, and I cannot pretend it did." She paused. "But I have been watching you for 4 months now. I have been watching you show up at appointments, and install grab bars, and bring mackerel to my neighbor, and turn your phone face down when we eat lunch. I have been watching you learn how to be present in ways you did not know how to be before. And what I see is a man who got it wrong, who understood he got it wrong, and who has been doing the work of getting it right without asking me to give him credit." He was very still. "What you are doing is real," she said. "I told you that before. I'm telling you again. I see it. I have been seeing it." She stopped. "And I need to tell you something honest, too. I love you." I did not stop. I filed the divorce because loving someone is not enough when they are not present. But the love did not go anywhere. It has been here the whole time, waiting to find out if there was going to be something for it to attach to." He looked at her with an expression she had not seen before. Not the controlled face of boardrooms, not the careful face of the past 4 months of showing up, but something underneath all of that. The face of a man who has been holding his breath for a very long time and has just been told he can exhale. "I love you," he said. "I have loved you since the ramyeon shop. Before that, since the conference room on the 19th floor, when you asked questions I was not ready for, and I could not look away. I have never stopped. I got it wrong. I got it wrong in ways I am still understanding. But I am not going to get it wrong the same way again. I promise you that. I know, she said. I am not asking you to be perfect. I am asking you to be here, in the room, all the way in the room, the way you have been. I will be here, every day, in the room. She stood. He stood. 3 feet between them. She walked around the ledge to him. She stopped in front of him. She put both hands flat on his chest. He put his arms around her, carefully, like something he had been waiting to do for a very long time and was not going to rush now that it was finally happening. She leaned into him. She let him hold her. They stood on the rooftop with Seoul spreading out below them, and neither of them spoke for a long time. Tae-jun. Yes. You are not moving back in. He made a small sound that was mostly laugh. I know. We are doing this slowly. My pace. Your pace. We are going to have conversations we have not had yet. There are things I need from you that I am going to say out loud, and you are going to hear them and not get defensive. Yes. And if you disappear again, I will not. If you do, she said, pulling back enough to look at him. If you do, I will not wait for you. I will not do it again. You understand that. I understand. Good. She rested her forehead against his chest. He put his chin on top of her head. They stood there, breathing. After a while, she said, "The baby is moving." He went very still. Now? Now. She took his hand and placed it against the side of her stomach. He waited. The baby kicked against his palm, small and unmistakable, and the most real thing he had ever felt. Now he made a sound he could not describe. That is her, Thandi said. That is her, he agreed. They stood on the rooftop with his hand on her stomach, and Seoul turning into night around them, and neither of them moved for a long time. After that night, things changed. Not back to what they were. Forward into something new. He started coming to the apartment on Tuesday and Thursday evenings, not to stay. To be there. He would sit in his spot on the floor next to her desk while she worked. Sometimes they would talk. Sometimes they would sit in comfortable silence while she edited, and he read parenting books or reviewed project reports or simply existed in the same room with her. On week 35, she handed him a children's book. "The baby can hear," she said. 23 weeks ago she started hearing. I am behind on reading to her. You can help. He looked at the book in his hands. A rabbit who stood at the edge of a pond wanting to swim. He opened it and started reading. His voice was careful, not performed. The voice of someone who understood that this mattered. The rabbit stood at the edge of the pond day after day, watching the other animals swim. The water looked cold and deep, and the rabbit did not know what was underneath. Halfway through, the rabbit put 1 foot in the water, just 1 foot. The water was cold, but the rabbit did not pull back. It stood there with 1 foot in the pond and 1 foot on dry ground. Thandi reached down from her chair and rested her hand on his head. Lightly, just resting there. He closed his eyes. He leaned into her hand, slightly, the way you lean toward warmth. He kept reading. The rabbit swam. It was splashy and uncertain, but the water was not as cold as it had looked from the bank, and on the last page, the rabbit was floating on its back in the middle of the water, looking at the sky, wondering why it had waited so long at the edge. He closed the book. Thandi's hand slid from his head to the side of his face, just for a second. Then she pulled it back. "Same time tomorrow," he said. "There are 12 chapters. So, yes. So, yes." This became another rhythm. The rabbit book. 12 chapters. He read 1 chapter every evening for 12 evenings, and by the end, Thandi was sitting on the floor next to him, instead of in her chair, her head on his shoulder, his arm around her, both of them building something that looked like trust. On week 37, she asked him a question he had not expected. Where are you living? Gangnam, a serviced residence. Is it home? No. Why not? He looked at her. Because home is not a place, it is wherever you are, and I have not been allowed back there yet. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, I need you to understand something. I am not inviting you to move in. That is not what this is. But I am 7 months pregnant, and there are things I am going to need help with soon, and the person I need help from is you. So we need to figure out what that looks like. Tell me what you need. I need to know you will be available, not in Gangnam, close. I need to know that if something happens at 2 in the morning, you can be here in 10 minutes, not 40. I can find a place in Mapo. There is a unit in this building, 3rd floor. Mrs. Bong told me it is empty. The landlord is her cousin. I can ask if it is available. He looked at her. You want me in this building? I want you close. That is not the same as living together. We have separate spaces. But you are in the building. You can be here when I need you. Okay. Ask Mrs. Bong. The 3rd floor unit was available. He signed the lease that week. He moved in 3 days later with 1 suitcase and a bag of kitchen supplies and the parenting books he had been reading for 3 months. Mrs. Bong appeared in his doorway the first evening. 3rd floor, she said. 2 floors down from her. Yes, ma'am. Good. Close enough to be useful. Far enough that she has space. You understand the difference? Yes, ma'am. Good. Friday. Mackerel. Do not forget. I will not forget. She left. He stood in his 3rd floor apartment looking at the walls and the window and the space that was not home but was close to it, and he felt something that had been tight in his chest for 6 months start to loosen. He was 2 floors away. If she needed him, he could be there in 90 seconds. That mattered more than anything. On week 38, they went to a furniture store together. She had put it off as long as she could, but the baby was coming in 8 weeks, and the apartment had no nursery furniture. He drove them to Itaewon. She walked through the store with the particular exhaustion of someone who was 38 weeks pregnant and tired of being pregnant. He followed with the list he had made 3 months ago. You have a list, she said. Yes. Of course you do. They spent 2 hours there. She vetoed his first 3 recommendations on aesthetic grounds. He accepted her input without argument. They compromised on a crib that met his safety requirements and her design preferences. They ordered a changing table, a small dresser, a rocking chair that she sat in for 5 minutes and declared perfect. When they left, he loaded everything into delivery and drove her home. Outside her building, she stopped him. Thank you for today. You don't need to thank me. She is my daughter too. I know. But you let me make the decisions. You had opinions, but you did not bulldoze me with them. That is different. I am learning. You are. She looked at him. Do you want to come up? I made myeokguk yesterday. There is extra. He went very still. You made myeokguk. Mrs. Bong taught me. So she said it is good for postpartum recovery, and I should practice now. I also learned how to make myeokguk. She stared at him. You learned how to make myeokguk. My mother taught me, 3 months ago. I wanted to know how to make it correctly. Something in her face opened completely. Come upstairs. They ate myeokguk in her kitchen. Hers was better. He told her so. She smiled, a real smile, the kind that reached her eyes and stayed there. After dinner, he washed the dishes without being asked. She sat at the kitchen table watching him. When he finished, she stood and walked over to him. Tae-jun. He turned. She reached up and touched his face, not a fleeting touch, a deliberate one, her palm against his cheek, her thumb brushing his jaw. I'm glad you're here, she said quietly. I'm glad you let me back. She leaned forward and kissed him. Soft. Brief. A question and an answer at the same time. When she pulled back, his eyes were closed. He opened them slowly. Tandi. I'm not ready for more than that, she said. Not yet. But I wanted you to know. I am glad you are here. I am glad you kept showing up. I am glad you learned how to make miyok and install grab bars and read rabbit books. I see all of it. It matters. Okay. Okay. She stepped back. Good night, Tae-jun. Good night. He walked down to the 3rd floor and sat in his apartment for an hour, with his hand on his face where she had touched him, feeling like he had been given something he did not deserve and was going to spend the rest of his life trying to be worthy of. Their daughter arrived on a cold morning in January, for 3 weeks before her due date. Thondi's water broke at 4 in the morning. She called him. He was upstairs in 90 seconds, dressed and ready, the hospital bag already packed and waiting by his door because he had prepared for this moment with the same systematic attention he brought to everything that mattered. He drove her to the hospital. He stayed with her through all of it. He held her hand when she needed it. He was quiet when she needed that. He was present, completely present, in a way he had never been present for anything in his life. When the baby was placed on Thondi's chest for the first time, he looked at his daughter, and his face came apart completely. Every wall he had ever built, every layer of control, every careful piece of architecture, all of it fell away. He cried. He did not try to stop it, and he just let it happen. Thondi looked at him. She saw it. She reached over with her free hand and found his. "She's here," Thondi said. "She's here," he said. His voice was wrecked. "Do you want to hold her?" He looked at Thondi, then at the baby, then back at Thondi. "Yes." Thondi handed her over. He held his daughter for the first time with both arms, careful and terrified and overwhelmed, and the baby opened her eyes and looked at him with the ancient, evaluating expression that all new people bring with them. "Hello," he said quietly. "I am your father. I'm going to try very hard to be good at this." The baby blinked. He took that as agreement. Soo-yeon arrived 2 hours later with Mrs. Bong, who had soup in a thermos, and the expression of someone who had been expecting this day and had prepared accordingly. When they saw the baby, Soo-yeon made a sound she would spend the next 6 months denying she made. Mrs. Bong patted her arm and said, "Drink soup. You are no use to anyone emotional." Zora sent 3 voice notes from Lagos, each one progressively less coherent with happiness. Ji-hwan sent flowers with a note. For the documentary filmmaker who saved 400 families and is now raising the next generation. The families send their love. The grandmother from Songdong sent a photograph of her new kitchen with a note in Korean that Thondi read twice and saved. Later, when the room was quiet and the baby was asleep, and the morning light was coming through the hospital window, Tae-jun sat in the chair next to the bed, holding Thondi's hand. "What are we going to tell her?" he said. "About us. Oh, when she is old enough to ask." Thondi looked at their daughter. "We are going to tell her the truth, that 2 people loved each other and lost each other, and then did the work of finding their way back. Not back to where it was. Forward to somewhere better. Somewhere better than Yongsan. Much better." He brought her hand to his mouth. He held it there. "Thondi." "Yes?" "Will you marry me? Again. Not the same marriage. A different one. The one where I show up. The one where I am in the room. The one where you do not have to build walls because I am already building them with you." She looked at him for a long moment. "Ask me again in 6 months." "Why 6 months?" "Because I need to see you do this. I need to see you be a father and be present and not disappear when things get hard. So I need 6 months of evidence that this is real. That is fair." "And Tae-jun?" "Yes?" "In 6 months, if you ask me again, the answer is going to be yes. I am telling you that now, so you know. But I need the 6 months. I will give you 6 months. I will give you whatever time you need," she smiled. "Good answer." 6 months later, on a rooftop in Mapo, on a warm evening in July, Kang Tae-jun asked Thondi and Kosi to marry him for the 2nd time. He did not bring a ring. He brought miyok that he had made himself, which had gotten significantly better over 6 months of practice. He brought the rabbit book, which their daughter loved, and which they had read so many times, both of them could recite it from memory. He brought a folder containing the deed to a house in Seongbuk-dong. Not Yongsan, not Gangnam, but the neighborhood they had chosen together. A house with space for her editing studio, and a garden, and a room for their daughter, and a kitchen with windows on both sides, so the coffee maker could go wherever she wanted it to go. He brought himself, the version he had built over 9 months of showing up, the version who read bedtime stories, and changed diapers, and got up at 3 in the morning when the baby cried, and learned how to soothe her back to sleep. The version who turned his phone off during dinner, and made it to every pediatrician appointment, and installed 3 more grab bars in Thandi's apartment, without being asked, because he had noticed she was struggling with balance while carrying the baby. But he knelt on the rooftop and looked at the woman who had given him a second chance he did not deserve, and had spent 9 months teaching him how to be worth it. "Thandi and Kosi, will you marry me?" Again. The better version. She looked at him. She looked at the Mayok Guk. She looked at the rabbit book. She looked at the folder with the house deed. "You bought a house." "We bought a house. It is in both our names. I signed my half over yesterday. If you say no, it is still yours." "Tae-jun, I am not buying you. I am not buying your answer. I am showing you that I am ready to build something with you. Equal ownership, equal decisions, a life we make together." She opened the folder. She read the deed. Both their names. She closed it. She looked at him. "Yes. Yes? Yes. I will marry you again, on the better version." He stood and pulled her into his arms and kissed her the way he should have been kissing her for 3 years, like she was the most important thing in the world, and he was never going to forget it again. When they broke apart, Mrs. Bong's voice came from the stairwell. "About time. I've been waiting with champagne for 20 minutes, non-alcoholic. I am not stupid." She emerged onto the rooftop with Soo-yeon, who was carrying their daughter, and crying. Mrs. Bong had glasses. Soo-yeon had a camera because she had learned from Thandi that important moments should be documented. They drank non-alcoholic champagne on a Mapo rooftop, while Seoul spread out below them, and a 6-month-old baby grabbed at everything in reach, and Soo-yeon took 47 photographs that would eventually end up in an album labeled the better version. When everyone left, Thandi and Tae-jun stayed on the rooftop with their daughter between them. "What do we do now?" he asked. "Now we go home. We put her to bed. We sit in the living room and have tea. We build the life we are building. Same as yesterday. Same as tomorrow." That sounds perfect. It is not perfect. It is real. Real is better. They went downstairs. They put their daughter to bed. They sat in the living room of Thandi's apartment, soon to be their old apartment, at the place they had built the foundation before moving forward into the house with both their names on the deed, and drank tea and talked about nothing important and everything important. Later, when the tea was gone and the night was late and Seoul was quiet around them, Thandi said, "I want to show you something." She pulled out a hard drive. She connected it to her laptop. She opened a folder labeled, "For Tae-jun," when ready. "I made this 3 months ago," she said. "I was going to show you eventually. I think now is eventually." She pressed play. It was a documentary. 23 minutes. The title card said, "The Man Who Learned to Show Up." It was him. 9 months of footage she had been taking without him knowing. Him sitting on her floor, reading the rabbit book. Him installing the grab bar, with absolute concentration. Saw him at the doctor's appointments taking notes. Him holding their daughter for the first time with his face coming apart. Him making myeokguk in her kitchen. Him turning his phone face down at lunch. The narration was Thandi's voice, quiet and precise, describing what it looks like when someone does the work of change. Not performed change. Real change. The kind that happens in small moments, repeated over months, until the accumulation becomes a different life. The last shot was the rooftop from tonight. Him kneeling with the miyakguk and the rabbit book and the folder. Her saying yes. The screen went dark. He could not speak. "You filmed all of that," he finally said. "I film everything that matters. You matter. This matters. Can I keep this? It is yours. I made it for you." He looked at the black screen, then at her. "And I do not deserve you." "No, but you are becoming someone who does. That is what the past 9 months have been. You becoming someone who deserves this. And you are not finished. Neither am I. We are both still building. But we are building together now. That is what matters." He pulled her close. She leaned into him. They sat on the couch in her small Mapo apartment that had been her refuge and her fortress and the place where she had rebuilt herself after the divorce. And they sat there together, knowing that soon they would leave this place for the house, with both their names on the deed. But this apartment would always be the place where they learned how to be better. "Thandi." "Yes?" "Thank you for not giving up on me. I gave up on the old version. I kept the possibility that there might be a better one. You did the work of proving me right. I will keep doing the work. I know. That is why I said yes." Outside, the chestnut vendor was setting up his cart. The cat jumped up. The vendor shooed it away. The same argument every night, a rhythm that marked time. Inside, 2 people who had loved and lost and found each other again sat together in the life they were building, and their daughter slept in the next room, and the coffee maker sat on the left side of the counter where Thandi had put it when this apartment was hers alone. Tomorrow they would start packing. Tomorrow they would begin the move to Seongbuk-dong, to the house with windows on both sides, and a garden, and a room for their daughter, and space for all the ways they were still growing. But tonight, they were here. In the small apartment in Mapo, in the place where Thandi had learned she was strong enough to leave, and Tae-jun had learned he needed to become someone worth coming back to. Tonight, they were home. And home, they had both learned, was not a place you found. It was a thing you built. Together. One small choice at a time. 2 people who loved each other, lost each other, and chose to build something better than what they had before. Not perfect. Real. If this story moved you, subscribe so you never miss the next one, and leave a comment before you go. Would you have given him a second chance? Or did Thandi let him back too soon? Tell me below. I read every single one.